Hello everyone. Welcome to this session of our course Appreciating Linguistics or Typological Approach. In the previous section I was talking about what is language, and then what does a what does a linguist study, and then who are the other people who use language, and why linguists are different from the other people who deal with languages. Let's say there are people who is a speech correctionist, as shown on the slide. So a speech correctionist also deals with language. A teacher of English, definitely. It's just not a speech correctionist who deals with language. Rather, we have teachers of English who also use or who also study language in a grammatical, like who also studies language for the keeping more importance or giving more importance to grammar and the structure. Then we have foreign language teachers who teach English. I give you an idea, or I give you some information about how the foreign languages, how English is taught in various institutes and schools as a foreign language in the Far East countries like China, Japan, and Korea. Then we also have literary artists who produce fictions, also non-fictions in the prose form, poetry form, and they treat or they consider language, or they use language as a literary medium. Further, we have psychologists who are also studying languages, language and psychology interface. Anthropologists, definitely, they focus a lot on language in their work. The missionaries, where language can be used in religious purpose. Then we have historians who are trying to understand the relation between history or language and society from a historical perspective, that is called diachronic linguistics. And also we have philosophers who are trying to understand the correlation between language, or the correlation between language and syntax and language and philosophy. And they have there's a term called logical syntax, which we can put it in this category. Besides that, we also have communications engineer. So what do? The engineers, they study how the message gets transmitted through a medium. So all of them, they do use language in some way or the other when they deal with language, or when they deal with a tool called language. But then, how is a linguist different from them? This was my question, or this was my concern in the previous class. So how a linguist is different from the rest of the people who I have discussed a while ago. The first thing that we understood, or the first thing that we realized, is that linguists are specialists of languages. That doesn't mean that they speak multiple languages. Not necessarily. You being a linguist, or I being a linguist, it's not necessary that I have to speak many languages. I'm not a polyglot in that sense. I study languages in a scientific manner, it's like primarily what I deal with when I'm trying to study languages, I look for the systematicity of it. So definitely I study it from following a systematic approach or a scientific approach. That's why the linguists, they focus on an organized body of information related to language. And they also, people like us, we also investigate and analyze multiple L's, like it's L1, L2, L3. So there are various languages, and we do analyze that. If I give you some kind of analogy, then I would say the relationship between a linguist and other language professionals, that's similar as the relation between a pure chemistry, like a pure chemistry researcher, and people who are working on chemical engineering. However, I would like to lead the discussion towards more linguistic specific issues, and I would tell you why linguistics seems to be a difficult discipline, or a little tricky discipline for many of the beginners. Those who have had at least some introduction courses in linguistics, you must have found that this is initially a little troublesome for the beginners, primarily for three reasons. First, the terminologies are very new, and then there are a lot of discipline specific jargons. So it becomes difficult for a beginner to remember and to use that in the discourse, in the teaching discourse or in academic discourse, because of the new interaction with the jargon, or with these discipline specific jargons. Also, the attitude plays a vital role. The moment we think or the moment we say or utter the word language, we seem to or we tend to take it in a very what is that, we don't really take it in a serious manner, because language happens to us, and all of us, we do speak languages in some way or the other, in some language, something or the other language we speak, which is why we take language as granted in most of the times. That's the reason such kind of an attitude actually prevents our interest, our research interest. We don't try to understand what is actually going on in the theory underlying structure when you are talking about this. So the surface word order is not sufficient to understand what linguistics is. There is also a lot of confusion between writing aspect of language and spoken aspect of language, for that matter language and script, and a lot of people, they think that correct and incorrect speech is a big thing to discuss, because if there is a set pattern and you have to use the language in that way, so that's not something we linguists we do. Rather, we always advocate for a non-Puritan view of language. So don't be a language purist and try to understand what is the difference between language with a big L and languages with a small l. Then after that, I told you, what does a linguist study? A linguist studies various levels, and the analysis goes on multiple levels or many different levels, like phonological level where we study sounds, morphological levels where we study morphemes and words, syntactic level, this deals with the sentence construction or the sentence structure. We also have semantics, where we are trying to understand how meaning plays a vital role in the whole discipline called linguistics. And finally, pragmatic or pragmatics, that is studied at a pragmatic level. That means how language is being used in the discourse as a system, the real use of language in the society. So with that, let's move over to the next slide. Who does a linguist study? We got to know what does a linguist study, and then I, as a linguist, I study languages. And when I say languages, I'm talking about L1, L2, L3, L4. And my study is systematic. It's more scientific, and then it's data driven. It's also based on empirical evidences. So when I say empirical evidence, I'm primarily talking about the linguistic data that we collect. So then now the question comes. So what do you mean by empirical data? So empirical data is primarily collected through the native speaker's intuition. So when I say native speaker's intuition, I'm introducing a term called speech community. So let's say there is a speech community of Hindi, for that matter, from Indian perspective, or Tamil speech community, or Telugu speech community. That means a particular community or a whole set of people who communicate with each other directly or indirectly via a common language. So if there are a group of students sitting here in my class, and it's a 40-membered classroom, let's say, and then out of 40, some 7 people are speaking Telugu, then I would say this is the Telugu speaking community or the Telugu speech community. These 7 people, when they talk to each other, when they try to communicate with each other, they use Telugu as the medium of communication. So that's the most basic definition of speech community. You can look at the slides, it's already written there. And remember, when we are trying to understand the term called speech community, we must be aware that this speech boundaries are not as distinct as we think. There's a lot of fluidity. So there is a lot of overlapping. Language change and language contact. Because of the contact in language, we do see a lot of overlapping between 2 different speech communities who share a common boundary, right? And sometimes also this boundary, it becomes political boundary. For example, there is a community called Menominee language. They speak Menominee language. So Menominee speech community, it's the language of the Menominee tribe, who are primarily found in Wisconsin, but also the Menominee tribe, they are found in French speaking community or the French speech community, Italian speech community, German speech community, and Latin speech community in Switzerland. So when you think about Menominee as a language, so obviously the speech community is scattered, or the speech community is distributed across different countries. So that is why this is what I would say, these are fairly large, and I think the largest community would be English, because there are several hundred millions of speakers across the globe. This is the lingua franca, we call it linking language. So English is a language which has varied, huge, and like a good numbered speech community. Then also we have very small speech communities. If I give you an example from an Indian perspective, or from India as a linguistic area, then we have these tribal languages, or the indigenous languages, which have very few numbers of speakers. So a lot of languages spoken in Indian hills, they have tiny speech communities. Sometimes the number gets reduced to 1,000. So there would be, let's say, there's a language called Monsang, which is spoken in northeastern states of India. There's hardly 1,000 languages, 1,000 speakers left in this speech community. So that's a reason we need to understand how large it is and how small it is when we are trying to talk about the socio-linguistic implications of such kind of study. Okay, so now let's move to the various language families that we have in the world. So these are the broad categories that we have, that we know typologically. We have Indo-European languages, Austronesian languages, Niger-Congo, Sino-Tibetan, Atlantic Congo. Then we have Afroasiatic, Pama-Nyungan, and Austroasiatic, plus there is also Dravidian. So these are a few prominent language families found in the world. And this is a map that you can see. Look at the all this blue colored area, or the blue shaded area. These are the languages which belong to the Indo-European language family, which has the highest number of speakers. It has the maximum number of like the biggest speech communities are found, or they belong to the Indo-European language family. Look at how blue it is. It's all where, like, starting from Australia to India to entire Europe, then we have the Americas. So that's the Indo-European family. Then we have Sino-Tibetan family, where you can see China and then some part of India. Then we have Thailand. So all these countries, they would have languages spoken that belong to the Sino-Tibetan language family. And then we have the other languages too. Look at Africa. So we have the green color, so that is the Niger-Congo family. And then we have all this sort of what is that, the brownish color. So the brownish one, these languages, they belong to either Afroasiatic or Nilo-Saharan languages. So these are the major language families, but that doesn't mean that typologically languages are kind of restricted only to this. Now look at this picture. These are all got from the internet. It's like a huge tree. This is the Indo-European tree. And look at this. So the Indo-European language has two primary branches. And what are the two primary branches? You have Indo-European and then you have Indo-Iranian. So one side we have Indo-European family, then the other side we have Indo-Iranian family. In the Indo-Iranian family, we also have, there is a separate one where we have Indo-Aryan, and these are primarily the Indic languages. And this entire, this side, the left side of this picture, you see all these Indic languages where they have the Iranian branch, northwestern zone, northern zone, eastern zone, then east central zone, southern zone, and central zone. So in the central zone, we have, let's look at India as a linguistic area, or let's focus on India as a linguistic area. In the central zone, we have languages like Bhil, then we have Gujarati, Rajasthani, Urdu, and Hindi. All of them are central zone Indic languages. Then we have southern zone, where we have Deccan languages, Konkani, Goan, and Marathi languages. So that's going to be in the southern zone. East central zone, we have Bagheli, then Awadhi, and Chhattisgarhi. There are many different languages that we have, which you can actually see from this picture. Then we have Sylheti, then Chittagong, and then Rangpuri and Assamese. These are going to be the Bengali Assamese group. And then we have major languages like Sinhala, Odia, and Bengali, Nepali, Sindhi, Punjabi, Pashto, Kurdish, Persian, all of them, they are going to be a part of the Indic languages, which has its connection with the Indo-European family. Then in the European languages, we have Celtic languages, Albanian, Slavic, Baltic, Italic, Armenian, Hellenic and Germanic languages. So look at the picture, we have English out here, which is a Germanic language. We also have all these major languages which belong to Indo-European family: Spanish, Russian, Polish, Portuguese, Italian, French, all of them, they are German. So these are the most popular or the most prominent languages which belong to the Indo-European group. Okay. Now with this, let's think about something. If you remember yesterday or in the previous lecture, I was talking about why should we title the course as Appreciating Linguistics. All these informations that you got through like understanding language and language families and why language is important. This is the time for us to understand why you think linguistics as an academic discipline should be appreciated. So the first thing is that it helps us to understand language as a dynamic system. Otherwise, in most of the cases, we kind of consider it as just a mode of communication or a medium of communication, you can say, or a tool, you can use that. Else, it's considered to be a part of literature or literary studies. But language is more into it, and linguistics actually gives us an idea that if you want to study language, you need to study the dynamicity of it. And the dynamicity of this wonderful tool that we have in hand can be studied well through this academic discipline called linguistics. It also helps a learner. When you study linguistics, you will actually get to know how your language is and how good or how well you understand your own language, or how good you know things about your own language. So that's only a discipline like linguistics which is going to enable you to understand or kind of to analyze. It also, a linguist or a trained linguist always appreciates other languages and their varieties. So it's like if you are a linguist, a minor or tiny bit of variation or tiny bit of difference at the word level, even at the phoneme level or the sentence level, that excites you a lot. You feel, oh wow, there is a variation here, and this variation should be studied carefully. So we generally appreciate languages and varieties. So why we call something as a language and something as a dialect, that's a different thing altogether. That's not that's beyond the scope of this course. But then remember, if you're a linguist, you got very happy, you kind of get excited when you see, oh, there is some variation here, there is some difference here. Even within a major language like English, when you encounter a country like US speaks in a different way, and a country like India, the English speakers, they speak in a different way, or for that matter in Singapore or in Hong Kong. So all these countries, they have their own ways of, or typical ways of speaking English. So these variations, they are considered to be very interesting when you try to appreciate this as a language. Even the languages which have tiny speech communities, let's say, the very small ones, the tribal languages in India, they would, when you encounter such, or when you collect some data, or when you work on such languages, it also gives you an idea how beautifully the systematic study of language can be. So this is only done by a linguist. It's very unlikely any other academic discipline is going to approach it from this much of appreciation. So that's why we must know how to appreciate this discipline, which is called linguistics. And linguists also study this tool as a systematic phenomenon. And then obviously we are trying to understand the comprehensive and the scientific explanations behind almost all kinds of linguistic units that we see, or that we hear, that we use. So considering it is based on, or it is substantiated by the empirical data or the linguistic data, then we must appreciate the discipline for its systematicity, also for its its descriptive nature. So instead of being rule governed all the time, we try to incorporate, or we try to consider, we try to include a lot of other variations that is found, which are found in the language. It also helps a learner, the person who is a trained linguist, it also helps her to develop, and it also it sort of supports us to understand the complexity of the human mind and brain. That's a different, that's a scope of linguistics that we have to understand the relation between human mind, brain and language. A linguist appreciates it in the best possible way. So that is why there are, and this discipline is truly interdisciplinary. Because of the interdisciplinary nature of this discipline, we must appreciate, and then let's find out. Since I ended the last point with human mind and human brain, I'm not really going to talk about it from the cognition and neuroscience perspective, but then I'm just going to give you a few extra information how language is associated with human life. And once you get to know how it is associated, you will appreciate this discipline even more, right? So, all of us know that we have already had some discussions on this, that language plays a great role. But why does it remain unobserved? What do you think? What is your idea about it? It remains unobserved because of its familiarity. All of us, we speak a language or the other. And since we speak languages, and some of us, we are multilinguals, we speak many languages at a time. And that sort of undermines the potential that language as a tool has. What studying it carefully can actually open up many doors to understand the human behavior, human cognition. It can also give you an idea how to trace, or how to trace the human movement. So language can actually do multiple things, and since it comes to us naturally, and we tend to take it as in a very unserious manner, in a very casual manner, and something like that we breathe and we talk. So that's the reason why language remains an area which needs to be probed further in different ways. And the saddest thing is that it doesn't have it doesn't really have the position that it deserves in our educational program, or for that matter in the speculations of our philosophers. So there are very few philosophers who actually they talk about language, or they try to study language from a philosophical perspective. Otherwise, if you look at it from the day-to-day discourse, our educational discourse, you see that hardly has there been any effort paid to put language in our educational programs. But the good thing is that late, though it's pretty late, but then it's something like better late than never. So in the last century, language has been studied in a scientific way by careful and comprehensive observation. So linguists are making it an effort, a sincere effort to understand how it can be studied in a careful manner, and we are actually paying much attention to the comprehensive observation that it might offer us. And linguistics, as I mentioned, we must appreciate that, and this is the scientific and systematic study of language. This is just the beginning, and it has got to go a long way, and it's going to go a long way because people who are studying linguistics, even those who are not studying linguistics formally, they're appreciating this discipline. So we must know what is the potential that this discipline has, and what kind of possibilities we as linguists and language enthusiasts for that matter can bring into the discipline. You must know, here is a bit of history that I want to put before you before I really move to the typological aspect of it. This is different from traditional grammar studies. So, how it's different, we'll see it a little later, but then let me just give you a brief overview or a brief idea related to the history of language. So we'll stop here for a while and then I'll come back to you in 1 minute.